Good morning, everyone. My name is David Lee, and welcome to today's event on the role of data-driven innovation in artificial intelligence, or AI, as I'll call it, save time from now on. This is the latest in a series of online events organised by the Data-Driven Innovation Initiative, or DDI. If you're not familiar with the DDI, it's an innovation network helping organisations tackle challenges for industry and society by doing data right to support Edinburgh in its ambition to become the data capital of Europe. And the DDI is delivered by the University of Edinburgh and Heriot-Watt University for the Edinburgh and South East City Region deal. Find out more online at the exceptionally simple web address of ddi.ac.uk. Data-driven innovation and AI have taken on a much higher profile in recent years, and today we're looking to join up a few of the dots about how they can fit together most effectively in the rich and complex tech ecosystem which is emerging in the Edinburgh City region and the wider Scottish economy. We've got four excellent speakers to help us with our discussions, and I hope you'll have some questions for them and some comments on what they say. Please pop any questions or comments that you have into the Q&A box, and I'll try to get through as many of them as I can during the time available. We'll start off with an open question for each panelist to allow them to get some big issues on the table and then move into more detail. I'll introduce the panelists one by one as I ask the questions again to save time. This is a very big topic to get through in a single hour. Okay, so first up, we'll go to Professor Michael Rovatos from the University of Edinburgh. Michael is Professor of Artificial Intelligence, Deputy Vice Principal of Research, AI, and Director of the Bayes Centre, which is the university's innovation hub for data science and AI. So, Michael, a couple of things. What is the role for Scottish universities in the development of AI? And maybe you can characterise a little bit that relationship between data-driven innovation and AI as you see it from your perspective.
Thanks for this great opening question. So Scotland was the second place in the world after the US that started engaging in AI research, and this goes back to the early 1960s. And I think, for a relatively small country, we're really punching way above our weight in terms of the quality and quantity of the research. At our university alone, we've got over 400 people working in AI, and also lots of people studying its applications or indeed its implications. There are several other universities, of course, with great strengths in specific areas like Heriot-Watt and Glasgow, Aberdeen, Dundee, and so on. What I view as the key role of universities in the development of AI is that they are the places where the ideas for new innovations come from, in particular when it comes to truly novel technologies. And it's only really if you have that technical edge that you can compete with those at the top, whether these are the tech giants or the global actors like the US and China. I think the other important thing about universities is their reputation, and we have universities with outstanding reputation in Scotland, brings talent into the country. And again, we can only really compete if we manage to attract the brightest and the best into the country. The other thing I think that's important is that universities quite often are a trusted and independent partner. Many people are concerned about the potential risks of AI, and I think we have a culture of doing research and innovation responsibly, and this pervades all our activities, which I think is a strength we need to play to. Now, regarding the relationship to data-driven innovation that you asked about, obviously not all data-driven innovation requires AI, but I think what's important is we're currently in a stage where lots of organizations are starting to learn how to use data to solve their challenges. AI is much more about having systems that can help make decisions rather than just look at data and for humans to derive insights from them. So I think the role of AI in the future will be much more to aid with better decision making rather than just having better information. And I think that will be the next level of the next step in innovation for our economy.
Okay, thanks very much, Michael. Some good points there to get us started off. Next up is Steph Wright, who is AI strategy lead at Innovation Centre, the Data Lab, and she led on the Data Lab's efforts in support of the Scottish Government in developing Scotland's AI strategy, and is now working with Gillian Docherty, CEO at the Data Lab, and the Scottish AI Alliance to deliver the strategy's vision for Scotland. So plenty to keep you busy there, Steph. So what do you think Scotland's AI strategy does to help cement what Michael just described as Scotland's role as a country that punches above its weight in terms of AI? So what will the strategy do? And again, where does data kind of fit into that complex picture?
Hello, hi David, and hello everyone. I've perfectly branded myself here today just to make sure that if there's any doubt what I'm working on. Anyway, yes, thank you for the question. For anyone who doesn't know, the strategy was launched at the end of March this year, and what it does is it's kind of laid out the vision for AI in Scotland, and that vision is quite simple. It is that Scotland will become a leader in the development and use of trustworthy, ethical, and inclusive AI, all contributing to make Scotland a fairer, greener, more prosperous, and outward-looking country. And so we're signaling to the world that that's what we want to do. And my colleague wanted me to mention the whole, analogy with cement as an inspiration in your question. The kind of construction analogy there is, was mentioned in our strategies welcome, is that, this is no standing start. We're building on strong foundations, long history of academic excellence in AI development, as Michael touched on, and a successful and well-connected AI community, and a desire to adopt AI more fully across Scotland. So we've taken a collaborative approach in the development of the strategy, and we are planning to continue to take a collaborative approach. So we plan to work across everyone, we're open and transparent process to realize this vision. In the strategy, we laid out a whole series of actions to take over 3 timeframes. We're currently in the first timeframe of first 100 days, then we move into year 1 and year 2. Obviously, the first timeframe is about establishing, say, the Scottish AI Alliance. We're currently in the process of recruiting the leadership circle, which we plan to have a spread of stakeholders from across all sectors, representative of the whole AI ecosystem in Scotland. And we're also developing, we've also begun work on the developing the Scottish AI playbook, which we intend to be an open guide to how we do AI in Scotland, incorporating our vision, our principles, and our practices. So, the strategy is just the beginning. It's kind of laying out our intentions and our direction of travel, but ultimately we want to work with everyone to help us get there.
Okay, thank you very much, Steph, for that. And I'll go now to Helen Hastie, who is Professor of Computer Science at Heriot-Watt University. She's an expert in human-robot interaction, and she's one of the academic leads for the National Robotarium, the world-leading collaboration between Heriot-Watt and Edinburgh, which is due to open on the Heriot-Watt campus in spring next year. So Helen, how important is sort of data-driven innovation and AI in the development of what will drive the National Robotarium?
Thanks, David. Thanks for the question. So the National Robotarium is a DDI hub. It's a cutting-edge research facility that's, as David said, being built on the outskirts of Edinburgh at Heriot-Watt campus. But it's more than just a building. What we're looking at is to work really closely with industry to understand their challenges, the problems that they face, and co-create solutions together in order to drive innovation forward so that AI and robotics can move and benefit society and the economy and net zero. So we can all really benefit from AI and robotics research. So the National Robotarium builds on work at the Edinburgh Centre of Robotics. So this is a joint initiative between Heriot-Watt and Edinburgh University that was founded in 2014. And the general theme around the research at the centre is about safe interaction. So as robots and also AI is starting to be used more, robots need to be able to interact safely with each other potentially and other systems, but also in the environment, which can be hugely dynamic. And we have a project called the EPSRC Orca Hub, which is joint work with Edinburgh and Heriot-Watt and other universities, looking at this idea of robotics being able to adapt to dynamic environments, and also with humans. So robots need to be able to understand humans, and we have a large HRI component in the center. And in the Robotarium itself, we're going to build a living lab, which is basically a flat, where we can bring people in and evaluate our methods and our robots in situ, in a familiar kind of environment. And as we move robots out, we need AI. AI is fundamental for intelligent robotics, for vision, for sensing, NLP, conversational AI, all these areas are key. So I'm very fortunate to have this partnership between Edinburgh and Heriot-Watt. So we have the research, we have the building, and what we are looking to also develop is skills. And Michael mentioned this as well. So we have a Centre for Doctoral Training where we're graduating about 150 students over the lifetime of the centre. And we're training them in key robotics and AI latest research, obviously, but also responsible research and innovation, and also other skills such as innovation and entrepreneur skills, so they can go out and create their own country and drive the next generation of robotics and AI. And finally, part of the National Robotarium is outreach. So we want to focus on engaging young people and the general public, raising awareness of robotics and AI, and but also increasing inclusion and diversity in the field, because we think that's also important as we move forward.
Great, thank you. Thanks very much, Helen. And finally, I'll come to Roy Donaldson, who is a technical solutions architect at Cisco Systems. Roy, where do you think the Scottish economy is doing quite well in terms of use of AI, and where are the areas, where are the sectors with some real untapped potential to do much more?
Yeah, thank you, David. Yeah, so interesting question actually around asking about AI. I think it's kind of a strange question actually, because let me just frame it in some type of context actually. If anybody looking to go and build a house generally doesn't ask their builders what hammers they use. And I think that's kind of the context we perhaps actually put AI in. AI is another tool in the kit bag of how you build and you construct actually applications for people, how you secure their environment, how you transform their infrastructure, how you get their teams to work. And I think the whole aspect of which Scottish sectors can benefit from that is, I would actually preface to say actually it's perhaps all across all Scottish sectors that can benefit from that. I think perhaps we should look more at the things that AI can deliver to people's actually tool sets rather than as AI as a technology itself. And at Cisco, we actually have AI embedded in many of our applications and our tools for our customers, and have had for a number of years already now. So AI isn't a new technology anymore. It is something that inherently comes actually as out of the box. Let me give you a great example. Today, we're using one of our competitors' products, actually Zoom, to actually do this call. We have a similar product to market called WebEx. And we recently acquired a company called Babel Labs. And why did we do that? Because they use AI to do noise reduction when we're on calls like this. And you might think noise reduction is simply filtering. It's not. A dog barking sounds different from a baby crying. And Babel Labs actually had researchers at the University of Edinburgh. That's one of the very specific things that we are very interested in them. And that's one of the things we really say is that, people don't consume AI. People consume collaboration technology that utilizes AI to provide a better experience to their customers, their partners, and their suppliers. And I think it's very much, we should look at the industry moving forward from actually AI as a technology to being more as an enabler of the technologies that are providing business value actually to the Scottish economy.
Okay, thanks, Roy. Just following on from that and touching on what a couple of other speakers have said, what about that kind of communication piece? How do we get across the kind of points that you've just made there, Roy, that AI is a way of, as you say, delivering better outcomes. It's part of the tool set, if you like. how do we get across, communicate more broadly outside an audience like today about what AI is and how it can actually help support businesses and kind of support individuals in the way that they live their lives, because we often talk about things within a bit of a closed loop. How do we take it outside and really communicate AI in a really clear way?
Yeah, David, I think, really actually to me, it's really talking about the business benefits that technology can actually bring to organizations. Really you should be actually looking actually at challenges within businesses and the solutions that we can actually provide actually to address those challenges for them. And I think, many of those solutions that we actually look to provide actually should actually provide the answers. And we should be able to then clearly demonstrate that there's benefits of using AI to enhance those benefits we can provide for that. A great example of that is that Cisco maintains a division called Talos. We are the largest non-government funded security research institute actually globally. And we heavily use AI to address security attacks and vulnerabilities. And the reason we do that is simply the sheer quantity of data that we receive. We could not do this without using AI techniques. And I think that's one of the really things we should really be able to actually say to people is that, if you did this without using AI, you might be X number of days before you could actually look to address a security vulnerability. With AI, we can actually tell you in 10 seconds what it is, where it came from, and who's infected, and how to address those challenges. I think that's really actually something that's really important we do, is actually saying, here are the benefits of utilizing AI to address this business problem, rather than discussing the different variants of AI that there are in the market. And I think the Scottish economy and Scottish businesses would far more like to hear actually answers and solutions to their challenges and problems to help them grow the economy, rather than discuss technicality details actually of AI.
Okay, I'll come to you on that, Steph, if I can. Just in terms of what Roy's just saying about using, looking at business problems, business solutions. How do you think the Scotland's AI strategy helps to address that, to look at those business solutions, and how well connected are Scottish businesses with the strategy and the understanding of what it can deliver for them?
Yeah, I mean, a very large component of our work program going ahead with the AI strategy is communication and just engagement with various stakeholder groups, including the public, which was touched on earlier, about how you can communicate the benefits of AI, but also with businesses. That's part of the work we're doing with the AI playbook. We kind of want to provide a kind of guide to either people developing AI or people looking to use AI either in their work or personal capacity. So it's kind of providing guidance for anyone wanting to get into it. Part of another thing we've committed to is around an AI capabilities directory. But just to something I didn't mention in my intro is that we're obviously part of a wider digital kind of strategy in the Scottish government. So the AI strategy, the Scottish Technology Ecosystem Review, and the digital strategy are kind of a triangle around the kind of digital ecosystem in Scotland. So nothing is standalone, just like data, AI isn't standalone because ultimately you need data to do AI. So when we kind of talk about the AI strategy, we're not just talking about AI. So it's about trying to join everything up and kind of collaborating with industry, academia, public sector, etc. We do have a big focus on the use of AI in the public sector, and a big work stream around ethical and explainable AI in the public sector. But yeah, I mean, the thing is, when we during our development process, we did a lot of talking about, you talk about developing AI and stuff, but not everyone is developing AI. Not everyone's making AI. Lots of organizations are just wondering how they can use AI to improve their business, whether it's just making small efficiencies or actually completely transforming what they do. And so we need to make sure that we cover that entire spectrum, that anything that includes AI, that we can try and provide guidance And ultimately, in a way, we can look at obviously regulation and ethics and all the much more complicated stuff. But in the first instance, you know, we're taking stakeholder input into the AI playbook, because we see that as a kind of a reference point for anyone wanting to embark on this journey with AI. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Michael, how well joined up are we in Scotland, do you think, in terms of all the players who need to be part of, again, doing what Roy says, in actually delivering tangible benefits from AI, even if it is operating beneath the surface and it's not something we talk about as a thing in itself? How well joined up are we, and how do you decide from where you're sitting where sort of research capability is to be deployed when there are so many potential applications? You're on mute, Michael.
Sorry, I think this is a very important question. I think actually our size and our culture and the ways of working we have in Scotland are very conducive to being very, you know, well connected and coordinated. And I think we actually can see a vision emerge around how our key sectors and our key strengths can come together. So in areas like, you know, health and care, tourism, energy, you know, the big areas where we have great data assets, we have great industry expertise and a great ecosystem. I think what we're maybe not doing enough of is you know, shouting about our successes and putting Scotland on the map. I mean, you have to realize this is an extremely competitive landscape internationally, and there are areas, Helen has spoken about natural language processing, robotics, that we're great at, but there is also great innovations coming out of industry. You know, Amazon and Canon Medical and other kind of leading businesses in technology are using AI in their products. And I think what I personally think might be very useful would be to have some sort of national AI institute that actually pulls all these different strands together and articulates what we aim to do in AI. And I think you know, in the Bay Centre, when we talk to lots of companies and investors, we sometimes hear Scotland is the world's best kept secret. I'd really like it to become the most visible and famous place for doing AI. And I think there is another important thing here, which is around what does it mean to be almost kind of a data-driven or AI aware nation. And I think there we really have to look at how we drive benefit for our citizens and businesses and government. So there's a bit of a culture to lead from a tech perspective, and kind of it's important to lead from the top and be the best in certain things to get the investment into the country. But I think it's important to think about how this will actually translate to benefit for our economy and our society.
Okay, thank you. And Helen, kind of similar question to you, just in terms of the Robotarium. How well joined up are you in academia with, you know, public sector, with business, in terms of all those elements that need to come together to really make the changes that you want to achieve through the Robotarium?
Sure. Just to add, that Scotland is currently very joined up. I was talking to Ellen Friedman on another panel yesterday, and she's from HP in California, and even she got the impression that Scotland is joined up both in terms of the academic institutes. So we have initiatives like CICSA, SRPE, who look to kind of join the dots within the academia, but also closely linked with industry, with SMEs. Maybe we need to work more towards, joining up with the larger players. It's very hard to compete with these large players, Facebook, Google, who have vast amounts of data. But I think what the current pandemic situation really has taught us is that we can't really silo these data sources anymore. There's a huge amount of power to having data all pulled together so that people can work on common problems and common challenges. And hopefully that's the way we can move forward. to advance the field in AI and robotics. And the National Robotarium, that is, as I mentioned, that is the ethos, is to work really, really closely with industry, hopefully, with their data as well, so that we can solve problems and co-create solutions for them.
Roy, what do you think? Is Scotland well joined up in terms of that kind of industry involvement in sort of building solutions that will help kind of society more generally? And what would be your observations on how Scotland does compare to maybe other countries that Cisco's working in?
Yeah, David, it's a competing world stage. It's something we need to be very consciously and aware of in Scotland, is that people don't look locally for talent anymore. People look globally of where to site locations based upon where they can gain access to high quality, good talent. You see that actually as you look at many of the large corporations where they site their bases. It is a shame we don't have more of some of them actually located in Scotland. We clearly have good talent that does punch well above its weight. We are a small country, which actually does limit the quantity of that talent that we have, which is a challenge that we do have and we need to face. But potentially having higher quality talent with smaller teams is a good thing to be able to get our name on that world stage. I definitely see some fabulous work being done to actually bring people actually to Scotland based upon some of the data talent we now have in Scotland. I would hope that we could replicate some of that great work in data that we've done actually in the field of AI as well, to bring more people there. But we must always be conscious that we are competing, and we do need to actually continually punch above our weight to actually bring people actually into the country. If you look actually where people have cited and the quantity of engineers that have been cited throughout the UK and Ireland, we probably are underrepresented. And that's a crying shame, because we have so many good people, many highly qualified people actually in Scotland, that we probably should be able to attract more people. And I would hope that we'd be attracting a higher percentage of that investment than has been seen up to now.
Okay, Steph, do you have any comments on that talent piece, in terms of when the strategy was put together? How obviously all these areas are interlinked: AI, data, cybersecurity, and so on. How do you think we're doing when you were putting the strategy together? What were the comments about that kind of talent base in Scotland and how we can develop that, as Roy's just described?
Well, I think it's quite well reported on that there is like a skills shortage in Scotland, especially around the data and tech industries, and therefore, obviously AI. At Data Lab itself, we have a huge skills program, but it's it's a drop in the ocean really in terms of what's actually needed as a country, it's all part of that. The way we developed the strategy is we convened working groups based on enabling themes. So we did have one on skills and knowledge, but I just kind of wanted to just put in the thing that here we are, universities, organizations, commercial organizations talking about AI and driving business and driving investment, etc. But Michael touched on it earlier, is that as a country we need to also talk about the benefits to society, and everything we're talking about here, anyone in the street has no idea about and also doesn't care about. And I think one of the things we're trying to do in the AI strategy is to try and bridge that gap. Is that it's not just about our universities being amazing, or us having like Cisco or Amazon or anything in Scotland doing amazing things, because the truth is, to the rest of Scotland, no one knows, and it's trying to make sure that there's a kind of whole Team Scotland approach to this. So when we put together the enabling themes for the development, it wasn't just about skills, it was about knowledge as well. It's about having a country, Scotland, that is knowledgeable about AI and data technologies, and that there's a huge challenge around that. But we need to make sure that's why we ended up having the focus. The vision is not about we will have the best universities in the world, or we will have the most AI companies in the world. It's about Scotland wants to lead in, trustworthy, ethical, and inclusive AI. And that obviously encompasses everything, but the societal benefit and how it benefits the people of Scotland is a key focus of what we want to do going forward. And, it was touched on right at the start about how do we communicate AI? It's, we're all sat here, we all know what AI is. And once again, like I said, you could say to, stop someone in the street in Edinburgh and go, did you know Edinburgh was one of the first universities that did AI in the world? To be like, no, do I care? No, I don't. And so it's just trying to get that countrywide, multi-stakeholder buy-in into AI, and therefore, raising awareness as a whole. And then some of these issues around, organizations using AI, or the skills shortage, or people just generally being aware that there are actually career paths and things in AI, is all part of it. We can't just talk about all these things in isolation. It's this massive, massive challenge that we need to tackle.
Very interesting point, Michael. Do you think, do we need to take the majority of people along, or do we just need to show them the solutions? And if AI is doing its job under the bonnet, do we really need to communicate it, or is it, coming back to Roy's initial point, all about those outcomes?
I think that's a very, very complex question. I think we need, in the end, a technology will only be successful if people trust it. And for people to trust it, they must have a level of awareness, and they need to be able to make informed choices about how they're going to use it and how it affects them, and how they judge it ultimately. And AI has a history of going through lots of cycles of, when it became popular and then it disappeared again. And we don't want things to happen to AI that happened to some other technologies. And I think our obligation is really to create a culture where and this is missing to some extent in the tech industry, where really we put the responsible development of technologies, and we put the purpose first rather than the ability to do so. We're not just going to build things just because we can. So I think on some level, you need the average citizen and consumer to be reassured by industry and government and researchers and academics that what we are exposing them to is safe, even if they don't understand how it works internally. Because that's true of any very advanced technology. We can't expect suddenly citizens to be experts in everything. But on the other hand, we need to work on the pathway to engage, providing pathways to engage with it for those who would like to, and for those who would want to engage with it. And I don't think, the majority of Scotland's citizens will work in AI, but many of them will work with AI. So we have to really think about, what does it mean? What is the AI a hairdresser needs? What is the AI a lorry driver needs? And how will it enter their lives? And will they have the skills to work with it, deal with it, feel safe around it, and say no when these things aren't guaranteed? So I think you need, and I'm very impressed, for example, by what Finland has done about this. I think you need a basic level of awareness that is very broad, so that everybody understands what it is as a citizen. And then you need the skills pipeline and the kind of the scaffolding between schools, universities, business, and the public sector to enable people to access more knowledge when they need it, and also to be able to afford that. It is high tech and it is upskilling. These things don't come for free. So we need to think about also how we invest in that.
Okay, I'm just going to, you touched obviously a little bit on the trust and the ethics there, and you mentioned it earlier on, Steph. There's a question saying, in what ways are ethics and trustworthiness embedded in the Scottish AI strategy, and not just in the strategy, but also in that wider sector that has got to engage with that strategy and deliver those positive outcomes? So where does ethics and trustworthiness really sit in this, Steph?
Well, I would say it's the core of what we're wanting to do, and we've kind of laid out, our principles and practices, and we're following the OECD principles. And then we also outlined that we want to adhere to the UNICEF's guidance on, as we specifically pointed out, the guidance of children and the use of AI. So, ethics needs to be baked into it. But, we're not saying ethics is easy. It isn't at all. But the trust issue is really important. I just wanted to go back to what Michael said, agree with everything he just said beforehand. We discussed about, it's not about making everyone AI experts. You don't have to be AI experts to understand that, what you're using is safe. And we want to get to a culture where, if people want to become AI experts, there are easy paths for them to do that there's, a pathway for them to do that. Or if people just want to find out what AI is, there's a path to do that. We're not going to force educate everyone. You must know exactly how machine learning algorithms work. But, it's kind of like, we reference Finland's Elements of AI MOOC, on our website. It's there. It's slightly marketing gimmicky, but it's brilliant, because you can get, it's a free course for everybody. And we just want to make sure that if anyone wants to find out more, there's more. But we want to create this culture that, if something, if an AI technology is developed in Scotland and is available for use by companies in Scotland, that there's an element of trust that this adheres to a certain range of principles, that that this is not a dodgy thing, and I articulated that really badly, but that's what the AI playbook hopefully will do.
What's your perspective, Roy, from a business perspective, as to how embedded ethics and trust are in how AI is developing across a whole range of partners?
Yeah, David, it's an interesting question, because we talk about AI actually as a topic, and yet AI actually covers a number of categories, in fact. So if you look at just basic data science, data analysis, you move forward from that into just machine learning. Potentially when you look at basic data analysis and machine learning, there's nothing really challenging around the ethics around those. They are purely algorithms that are run on data that come out with a predefined actually output. There isn't really effectively the challenge that people potentially have is around the intelligence aspect of actually making more independent decisions actually they feel actually with artificial intelligence. So from my perspective, actually, and you look at the field of artificial intelligence, there's quite a lot of actually technology that sits within that categories that are relatively ethical and very simple to implement actually with off-the-shelf tooling that's very, very well understood, that can provide massive benefits to people and organizations. I think it's really more when you move on to some more of the the more advanced types of artificial intelligence algorithms, and potentially in other forms of use cases that people need really more support around their understanding of what that can be. If you take there's some really some very leading edge fabulous utilizations of artificial intelligence you can use nowadays. To me, actually, one of the fabulous examples really actually sit actually in health. When you look at actually things like cancer analysis, and you now have artificial intelligence algorithms that can actually detect things actually in a medical environment to as good as the best people on their best days. And I think those things actually are fabulous enablers to technology, particularly when we have a lack of medical staff now actually that just simply cannot cope with the quantity of people that need to be looked at. But it's those types of areas where I believe ethics and really understanding what is being used are areas that we need to provide a lot of support to people with. If I'm going to open up an app on my mobile phone, I'm going to work out whether it's quicker to get into the office actually by hopping on that bus or getting that train today or not. I probably am not looking for a ton of really support actually around that now, am I? And that's where machine learning actually just works fabulously. We can simply look at patterns across a period in time. We can look forward into where other people are pulling some data that you just can't see and say, you know what, that bus is going to be faster for you to get into the centre of Edinburgh today. Hop on that one. So I think it really does actually vary based upon where it is you're using the technology and how much level of support you need to actually provide to people to give them an understanding about what it is that's being utilised.
Yeah, and there's a question in the box just going back to the data that you use. All AI requires constant flows of data, which raises questions about privacy. The ethics is not just about the actionable insights, it's about where the information comes from in the first place. Michael, any comments on that, please?
So I think the data issue is very important here, but I think it's important to also recognize that with a lot of the problems we're seeing around privacy and then around the sensitive information leaking or being misused or resold and so on, I think the underlying issue is very often kind of poor business practice and although the incentive for doing bad things with data might be because you're using AI, it is not kind of the AI's fault. I mean, I think we need to always remind ourselves that while AI raises a lot of kind of imagery around some magical thing that does very clever things, almost in every case we've seen, it's really kind of still performing very narrow specific functions, which are very carefully crafted by human engineers, and where the people in organizations who decide to deploy these applications really can make very conscious decisions. So I think we need to think about these things to some extent separately. What is an issue is that there is a lot of kind of opportunistic data harvesting in all kinds of domains, which is driven by a very kind of opportunistic way of thinking of, well, we could do something very exciting with it. So the more data, the better. I think we do need to get away from that narrative, and we really need to think about the value of data in expressed through the value of the applications that are built on top of it. Some of the examples Roy used, for example, you can do a lot of the stuff, what I call AI in your pocket, a lot of the stuff that's on your mobile phone, you can do a lot of that analysis without knowing anything about the identities of people, for example. And I do think we need a bit of a change of culture around that. And really the public to expect that data should be used to the extent that it's really needed. I think there's also a bit of a problem around the new technologies we're seeing in machine learning and neural networks and so on, that they're increasingly data hungry when they're trying to solve more complex problems. So I think there is really also the onus is on us as researchers in academia and in industry to also look at new methods that can do certain things with less data.
Okay, thank you. Helen, I'm just going to come to you. If I can ask the panelists, try and answer these questions quite quickly now, because I've only got 15 minutes left somehow. Helen, if you're recruiting somebody for Heriot Watt, does it matter that they're in Edinburgh or that they can get to you, or would you recruit from anywhere now? Would you take someone from anywhere in the world because they can just do the job remotely?
So that's an interesting question. So as we've seen in the pandemic, we're all working remotely, but for example, robotics, it can be quite tricky. But now we're seeing the use more of digital twins, which is basically a data representation, but it can be a digital twin of an infrastructure, of a building, of offsite, of a factory. So there are new innovations coming out because we're all working remotely that we can really leverage. I mean, I would always prefer to work side by side next to somebody, especially if I'm recruiting somebody new. So there are challenges with recruitment and visas, etc. But the world is definitely opening up.
Roy, just briefly on that point, do people need to get together in the same place, or can you work completely effectively remotely? Is the world a talent pool now?
Yeah, it's a great question. It depends how wide or open you would like your organization to be. We think moving forward there will be a hybrid workspace actually for that. And let me just give you a great example. I was a couple of minutes actually late joining the panel today actually because I was actually collaborating on video and whiteboarding with a colleague in the Middle East, working on a project for deliver something for a customer in Oman. And I'm based in Scotland, and the rest of the team that looks after the customer actually are based actually between Manchester and London. So, you come back actually and ask me the question, do I need to be there? No. Do I like to be there sometimes? Yes. And we think that, there will be a hybrid that balances between these environments where, people will need to be in an office. We are social animals. We like to get together with other people. It helps when you're collaborating to be together with people. But do we need to do it all the time like we used to? Perhaps not. Are we always going to be 100% remotely? Perhaps not. But for people that need to drop their kids off at school early, maybe they'd like to work from home 2 or 3 days a week. When people need to collaborate, for instance, in advertising agencies, maybe they want to be in the office to get all their teams together to collaborate in the same room. So I think it will actually change going forward. I think the only thing we can actually say based upon actually what we've just come through recently is things will change. And I don't think any of us actually have the true answer of what the outcome will look like in a few years, but I can definitely say it won't look like what it did a couple of years previously.
Okay, thank you, Roy. Michael, there's quite a complex question here about engaging AI and robotics as well with the arts, the culture sector and literature arts departments in universities, and looking at this called trust public engagement issue. How can you elicit that sort of the artistic community and writers and so on to get across that message? I don't think you see the question in the box. It's quite a complex question. If you can have a quick go at that, Michael, you've got 30 seconds to answer that question.
I'll try. So we have actually a big program at our university that's called Creative Informatics, and that looks at kind of help using data and AI to innovate in the creative sector. And also there's of course lots of work with digital humanities, people in literature and so on, trying to use data, trying to use AI for their work. So I think this is a very fruitful interaction, in particular because the arts and creative expression allows people to experience and engage with new technologies in ways that are novel and that maybe communicate a lot of things to the spectator that we can't do just with words, or might be too complex if we try to do them with lots of kind of scientific lingo. What I would be a bit careful about, we've seen amazing artworks being done with AI. For example, is a great example of an artist using neural networks to play around with the gender perception using imagery from creating artificial kind of drag queens, which is extremely fascinating. I think what I would caution a little bit against is that while the science fiction element of AI is extremely inspiring and stimulating for debate, and really it's really about human nature and the future and humanity and the future of humanity. I think it's important to be very aware that that's not the reality. AI can't even answer my email or load the dishwasher yet. So it's always great to dream up future visions, but I think the focus now needs to be on making best use of what we have and developing that further.
Okay, we'll just look forward. You've mentioned their novel, sort of exciting application. I'm just going to come to all the panelists in turn. Steph, you first, just so you're aware. What to you is the big exciting thing? What excites you most about the potential of artificial intelligence? What's the big novel application that you think, oh, that's brilliant, that if we really nail this, AI can do this amazing thing? What is it to you, Steph, first of all? Then I'll come to Helen, Roy, and then back to Michael.
For me, with my other data lab hat on, is the potential in healthcare. AI has huge potential to transform healthcare. I'm not saying that about AI taking over the jobs of radiologists or anything. It's about AI augmenting and assisting, an under-strain health system to make things better and quicker and better for patients. There's so much potential there. In medical imaging is the obvious thing, but I'm a big proponent of human-centric AI, that you never remove the human from the equation there. So that AI technology works with medical staff to provide better patient care, and that's the most exciting thing for me, because I think that's a real game changer there.
Helen, I'll broaden it out to kind of AI and robotics for you. What really excites you?
Well, just going on to carrying on from the human-centric angle that Steph mentioned. So conversational AI, we're already making massive leeway on that. So if robots and AI algorithms could communicate as well as humans, they could explain their reasoning if needed. So the user could probe and ask, why are you making that decision? What's the reasoning behind that? I think that will be key for adoption for both AI and robotics going forward.
And what sort of areas, Helen? I mean, we've talked about this in previous discussions. You've talked about healthcare as well in terms of AI and robotics, and also the energy sector and so on. Can you just give us a couple of, for instances, where you can already see AI and robotics making a real practical difference and delivering much better outcomes?
Sure. Well, just take energy, for example. We're looking at robots that can do continuous inspection and maintenance, but it goes back to robots being able to adapt to dynamic environments. And in order to do that, they need AI, they need vision components, they need to be able to sense, they need to do obstacle avoidance, and they need to be able to communicate their findings in a way that's easy to understand. So that's one example of how AI is moving forward in the energy sector. And about trustworthy autonomous systems, there's a large UK-wide program coming from UKRI, it's about 34 million, to look at trustworthy autonomous systems, and that includes AI as well. And in Scotland, we have 2 of these nodes, so these smaller projects, parts of the wider program, looking at trust, human interaction for trust, and also governance and regulation. That's led by Edinburgh University. So trustworthy AI, trustworthy autonomous systems is absolutely key going forward, and I think the government is realizing that as well.
Okay, Roy, what really excites you about the future? What gets you up in the morning and think, you're doing something on the day and you think this is brilliant. This is going to make a real difference.
David, AI helps us in so many areas going forward, but fundamentally, it's all about data. And that's the one thing that's been happening actually over the last very number of years, is we've just generated more and more and more data, and we have the potential now to collect more and more data. And the challenge that we see with that is that people cannot then understand it, and we need something to look at that data for us. We spoke, right at the very start, I said, what's the applicability of AI? And I said, it's really about the use cases of using AI. And there's been questions about the ethicity of the data itself. But, just imagine, any of us who may want to go to the sun again in the future, think of that, a beach and a cold beer, someone bringing it to you. Think of that. And you get there on a plane. What those planes got, they've got these massive jet engines. How do we know that those jet engines are safe and secure? Well, what you do is you sense them up. You put hundreds and hundreds of thousands of devices and sensors on those jet engines, and you turn them up. And what does that do? That generates so much data. Using AI, we can then process that and say that engine is a safe engine. I can sit on the beach with my pina colada in the sun. And that's the type of thing that you want to be able to see. We want to be able to process the vast quantity of data we all generate and actually gain insight and benefit out of that. And to me, that's one of the things that AI is going to give us going forward in the future.
Okay, and Michael, what really excites you about your job? You must be doing so many different things on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis, but what potential really excites you?
I think, I mean, because I have seen what people do, and we've got kind of 50 companies around us who do lots of different things, and we work with lots of other researchers around the world. And so we've seen all these great ideas they have in things like health and manufacturing and retail and so on. So I really like to think about the areas that people maybe haven't thought about that much. And I think on a global level, the next big challenge is going to be food. We know that, in conjunction with climate, obviously. And I think there are actually things we can adapt from other areas like health, which we could do great things there. I'm thinking of the farmer in Africa who could take a picture of his animal and find out what their what disease they might be suffering from, or what their nutrition status is. And we've got a long history of doing animal genetics here, and based on those models you could very easily help increase production. But there are other areas we can understand disease in crops. We can try to reduce the energy consumption and carbon footprint of food production. We can improve the supply chains, and I think some people are already getting into these things. So we've got a company that uses robotic devices to monitor grains in silos. But there will be other things like understanding. We've been talking to a big global coffee chain. How does the bean get from Africa to the customer somewhere in the US or in China? And how can we actually optimize that to environmental and economic outcomes. So
I'll have to stop you there, Michael, because we are running out of time. I presume you were talking about actual silos rather than figurative silos there, which we do talk about a lot in this area. Final question to everybody. Steph first. Single action, 30 seconds each, single action to help us join up data-driven innovation and AI more effectively to deliver positive outcomes.
Oh, first, well, I from a AI strategy bit, please get involved. Get in touch, get involved, join events and things. When we put out consultations, events, get involved. Just talk to us. If we haven't approached you to talk to you, please come talk to us, because we want to make sure this is collaborative going forward. No small group can solve all the challenges for everyone. We must all work together.
Okay, Helen?
That stole my word. I was going to say collaborate. So all of these projects going forward need multidisciplinary teams. No matter how big these institutes are, I think cross-institute collaboration is going to be key going forward. And we already have a lot of projects that do that. So hopefully going forward, let's continue to collaborate.
Roy?
Yeah, David, we think to the future, what should people be looking to do? So we think people will be, reimagining all their applications, how they actually use their applications. We think they need to secure the data across those applications throughout all of it. We think they need to empower their teams to move forward, to work differently in a new hybrid way. And I think, when we start doing all of the above, we'll start actually seeing the real benefits out of the underlying technology to all those different organizations that take advantage of those transformers technologies in the UK.
Okay, and Michael, finally, one action we could take to join data-driven innovation AI out more effectively.
I would say work closely with the decision makers in organizations to help them understand how they can put these technologies to their service. I think that's one of the biggest roadblocks to wider adoption and collaboration.
Okay, thank you very much. There was one fiendishly complex question in the Q&A box, which I'm going to ask any of our panelists if you can answer it afterwards. That would be brilliant. A guy who's been juggling his sick baby, he adds not literally juggling his sick baby in brackets, which is helpful, is asking a very complex question about defense. If anybody thinks they can take that on or pick it up with him offline, that would be absolutely brilliant. So thank you very much to Roy, to Helen, to Steph, and to Michael. We've covered a lot of ground there. It is a big complex topic, but I think it all comes back to everybody joining the dots, working together and collaborating effectively, and actually looking at what is coming out at the end, what problems are we trying to solve, and how can we work together to get there to best effect. So thank you for listening in. Look at the DDI website. There's lots of extremely interesting stuff going on, and there is some great collaboration. Thanks again for tuning in. Thanks to our panelists, and please enjoy the rest of your day. Cheers.